The average U.S. resident will live to be 77 years old. It's a huge change that is impacting our communities. Stay tuned for the heart of the matter. Getting braces at age 70, working well into your 80s. Today's seniors are more active and have higher expectations for their golden years. On today's program, we explore the consequences for our entire community as the population bubble moves up in age. Donnie Rolls has this report to start us out.
It isn't any trouble just to S-M-I-L-E.
Once a year, seniors come from far and wide to participate in the annual Senior Fest in Mason City, Iowa.
This is the 7th year that we've had our annual Senior Fest. We invite the public in, especially the seniors, to come in and have a free breakfast. We have exhibits throughout the building, free health checks, also food and dancing, and we also have the nationally known speakers.
The event caters to a new generation of seniors, a generation expected to live longer than previous ones, and a group of people that seem to be interested in doing more than their parents did.
Oh, I like to make things out of wood usually, and then a little traveling, sometimes a little gambling in the casinos and stuff.
I used to dance a lot for many, many years. My husband and I, we took vacations. We did a lot of walking.
I've done some travel nursing, which I've enjoyed. Gone out to California. I would like to travel.
But having more time means needing more money.
Do you have any concerns about having enough money?
No, I don't think so. I'm on a pretty good pension.
Oh, lots of things worry a person, you know. Paying your bills and taking care of your health and just, you name it.
I always saved at work on a 401k or a 403b because I worked at the hospital. And I thought my children weren't going to have the money to take care of me, so it was better if I planned ahead. I thought, you know, I better plan ahead as best I could.
We asked someone who works with seniors every day how the seniors of today are different than the seniors of decades past.
What they used to think when they would get old is you would retire, you would go on vacation a little bit, you would see your family, see your grandkids grow up, but your activity level would not be very high. I cannot believe the activities that they offer. They go fishing, bingo, and different things like that. They're still active participants in our community. They just need more assistance. So, I mean, that's what people have to get past.
Oh, I've been very blessed.
Ed Fisher is beyond retirement age, but the 73-year-old editorial cartoonist says he's not interested in retiring. He likes his work too much to quit.
This is our Governor Tim Pawlenty when he took office.
He's a good example of a generation living longer, at least in part because of improved healthcare technology.
I had a valve replaced in my heart. And that wasn't possible, I don't think, 10 years ago. So I wouldn't even be here talking to you, maybe. So that's what's happening.
He says the improved health of today's seniors means that they have more options than previous generations have had.
Not the people in rocking chairs anymore. Bill Blaine, who was my editor and publisher, he was playing tennis in the 70s.
Fisher says his parents help illustrate the difference between the two generations.
My parents, they died watching television, and I just refused to do that. I refused to, I'm going to travel, I'm going to be in a better place, I'm going to live it to the hilt and just maintain my life with working and with being with my grandkids.
But as our community demographics lean toward more seniors, communities may have to change programs and services to focus more on growing senior populations. The question is, will we be ready for a change that's already happening?
Thank you for that report, Donnie. In our studio today are 3 guests who will help shed some light on these trends and help us answer some of those questions. Arlene Thigh from Southeast Minnesota Area Agency on Aging, Dr. Eric Tangalos of Mayo Clinic, and Lucinda Stockwell of Rochester, Minnesota. Welcome to the program, everyone. Thanks for being here. Well, Arlene, your organization does some number crunching. You have an idea of what that population looks like in our area. What can you tell us about the number of seniors we have as a percentage of our population, and perhaps kind of what's the general age range? What are we looking at?
Well, if you're looking at the population of 65 and older, which is also a pretty common thing for many programs, we have some counties that have as low as 12% senior, over 65, and we have other counties like Freeborn and Mauer that are closer to 20. So, right now, perhaps 1 out of 8 people is over 65. In the next 20 years, we'll be seeing that number drop to 1 in 5.
Okay.
So we have a lot.
And let's talk a little bit about average life expectancy. That keeps moving up. And Doctor, why is that?
Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, what's really happened is that so many people now get to age 65. So that's been the biggest demographic shift. Back in 1900, a newborn lived to age 50. That was the average. Okay. Now, a newborn born this year, average life expectancy, almost 79 years. Wow, okay. So from a 65-year-old perspective, you live to age 65 now, maybe you've got another 17, 18 years to live. Back at the turn of the century, it might have been 12 years. So again, the biggest gains have been in life expectancy from birth, but there continue to be gains at 65 and beyond. But the real numbers are because so many more people are living to age 65. And then they've got opportunities after age 65 to do it well, as a matter of fact.
As a matter of fact. Lucinda, the lifestyle of seniors, we keep hearing that it has really changed over the last few years. Tell us how life is different for you as a senior than perhaps what you maybe anticipated it would be.
Well, I think I had the image of the rocking chair, but I found that I'm actually probably more active in retirement than I was when I was working. I do a lot of volunteering, a lot of traveling, spend a lot of time with friends and family, and developing new interests that I never even anticipated when I was younger.
Okay. And if you don't mind my saying, you have decided to get braces at your age. Tell us why you decided to do that.
Well, one of the things that I've done is I went with Elder Hostel out to the Navajo Reservation in Arizona and tutored and had a wonderful time. It was one of the highlights of my life. Except the kids called me Miss Fang because my teeth were crooked.
Okay.
So I came back and mentioned it to my dentist, and he said, well, I think we could fix that. So I went to the orthodontist and said, I want my teeth straightened. And he said, fine, and he put the braces on, and I thought, oh, I was going to be able to say, I'm the oldest patient you have because I'm 70. And he said, no, I have a woman in her 80s.
Okay.
So I think that we're braver about doing things.
Okay. All right. And in terms of programming and different activities that are offered for seniors, has that dynamic changed? It's no longer just, and not that there's anything wrong with bingo, but it's not sitting, stamping a card anymore, is it?
Well, I think if you ask the senior centers of our region what's been changing, they have, some of them have lost membership. The older who used to do the cards every week or certain programs, they're not coming out to do that anymore. So they have to be more creative, have other kinds of activities that meet the needs of the broad interest of the other younger seniors. You mentioned Elder Hostel, programs like that, or specific, fishing. It could be fly tying, or all kinds of different educational programs.
I think the senior centers are addressing some of those needs. And one of the things that just in the 9 years that I've been involved with the senior center in Rochester, I've been really pleased to see the increase in programs in education. A lot of things on current events, a lot of historical programs and health programs, so that there is much more variety than there was probably 9 or 10 years ago.
The real theme is the social interaction. The key to success for seniors as individuals or for senior centers as a group is what can you do socially keep people engaged. And the best senior centers, like the one you just saw with that yearly activity, they're bringing people together. And one of the concepts of what Lucinda's already shared with you is the volunteerism that's out there. And seniors that volunteer do better than seniors that don't.
So there's a health benefit beside.
Well, it's maybe a more complex thought process because no one's really sure if you force yourself to volunteer if you're going to do well. But people that find themselves in volunteer situations clearly have better social interactions, have better physical health, have better emotional health, and have a better structure to their lives as well. So if you're volunteering, and the MacArthur Project is one very good example of this, if you're volunteering, you're doing the right thing as you're getting older.
Well, and let's talk about what communities are experiencing as these populations age. Volunteerism is a great pool to draw from. What other impacts are there on our local communities as a result of this changing elderly population?
I'll give you one example that relates to volunteer drivers and transportation. It's getting more and more difficult to find volunteer drivers to take people places, and that is so important. Most of our volunteer drivers are older themselves, and they get to a point where they perhaps shouldn't be driving anymore, perhaps because of eyesight or something like that. And to get a replacement for those older drivers is nearly impossible.
All right. Dr. Tangalos, health issues used to be an obstacle, but now we're replacing our knees, we're replacing our hips. Is health still an obstacle to good life when you are a senior?
Well, people are getting healthier as they get older. Compared to what they were 10, 20 years ago, the current 70 is the old 50. And as your lead-in article talked about, valve replacement, common. People don't die of one problem anymore. They actually die of a multiplicity of problems that takes them into older age. And the downside of that is that they can have a greater burden of illness as they get older. Now, the other thing that's happened is, as we've gone from a median age of survival of 72 to 79, a number of new diseases kind of kick in. So Alzheimer's disease is a disease that we experience now because we've extended that lifespan.
You've eliminated those other.
Well, and no, we've gotten into that time frame when you get that disease. Osteoporosis is going to be a huge issue, especially for women, and especially for women now that don't have estrogens. The previous generation all got hormone therapy. We don't do that anymore, and so those bones are going to be more at risk. And then the other problem that I see so often now in the very elderly is macular degeneration. That's a true bummer. Here you are in your 80s, late 80s, 90s, still vigorous, still cognitively intact, and you can't read and you can't see anything. And it is an incredibly common problem in that population.
In that population.
Go ahead. An idea. Communities for a lifetime is kind of a term that Administration on Aging has been using to help city planners plan for the aging, population growth, and things like signage for street signs and roadways, and having businesses put products. You talked about osteoporosis and ability to lift things and move things and shop at eye level for the common products, and having labels of things bigger and things like that are all things that we're going to see more of, I think.
One topic that always has to be talked about when you talk about senior issues is Medicare and Social Security. And some of the conversation has revolved around those programs were established to help the most in need, the infirm, in their final years. Final years are no longer at 62, 65. They're much beyond that. Is there an argument to be made that really there is a legitimate case for changes in those programs?
Well, it's kind of funny. 30 years ago when I entered the aging field, they were talking about tweaking Medicare and Social Security so that it would last for the aging, boomers and so forth. And if they just tweaked it a little bit along the way, a little more than they have, I don't think we'd be in the biggest problem that we have right now or for the future. But Social Security and Medicare is also for the disabled. And I think people automatically assume it's for people over 65, but it is also for younger people who are there in an accident, something happens and they cannot work. And I think that is a huge safety net for those people and their families. I think Medicare is good.
Social Security came out of the 1930s. And so it came out of a time when there were way more workers than there were retirees. And that's how it was built. It was predicated on that. And so for every dozen workers, maybe one was retired. We're getting to a point right now where we've got 6 workers for everyone that's retired, and that number is going to continue to go down. And it was never planned that you would work for 30 years and retire for 30 years, but that's what we see. So Social Security has its problems along that way. Medicare and Medicaid came out of the 1940s. And let's just talk about Medicaid because that's where you had the interest. Medicaid was never meant as the senior safety net. It wasn't put together that way, but it is the senior safety net now. So it was built on a system that was supposed to take care of younger people, children, disabilities, but for those that end up in the nursing home, it is the #1 payer. And Medicaid is both a federal and a state-based program, which puts the burden on states that never really expected this amount of cash outflow for its seniors. The boomers will continue to shape the way this country looks, and their demands will be different. We've hinted at some of them, but they'll demand different services with regards to housing, community, the sense of self-awareness, self-actualization. Where it will all end up, I'm not sure. I do think that the bulk are going to be healthier, more physically active for a longer period of time, and they will place significant demands upon cities, townships, counties to change the way they do business.
It'll be different, that's for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us to share your perspective on this issue. Donnie Rolls asked area residents how they plan to spend their senior years.
What do you expect to be doing in 10 or 15 years?
I hope I'm still around.
That's kind of a hard question because I guess I kind of try to go with the flow because I don't really plan that far in advance of things I'd like to do.
Yes, I like to go fishing with my son and my daughter-in-law.
I hope to still be active. You know, I babysit my granddaughter right now, which I'll probably do for the next 5 years. She's just going into kindergarten. And I still hope to travel.
Many seniors are looking forward to busy schedules in their golden years. Dr. Dale Anderson practiced for more than 47 years as a family doctor, board-certified surgeon, and board-certified emergency physician. Today, he emphasizes the importance of a positive attitude for good health, allowing seniors to achieve those ambitious goals. Dr. Anderson, thank you so much for visiting with us today. You have an interesting history. You were a surgeon, a medical doctor, and now you go around the country and you talk about feeling good in another way. Tell us what caused you to move from kind of serious medicine to one of encouraging people to be more healthy through happiness.
Right. Well, I think that is serious medicine, happiness is. Okay. And it became very apparent over all these years in medicine that happy people are healthier people. And health brings happiness, happiness brings health. And if we can get into the chemistry of that, which now we realize we can measure, we can PET scan it, we can MRI it, we can do tests on the blood to show melatonin, serotonin, cortisols, many things. We can show that for every emotion, there is a physiological chemistry. Oh, okay. Now, the physiology of anger, the physiology of sadness is not looked upon as a healthy chemistry. Okay. But the physiology of happiness is. And this came about from an actress who I saw 35 years ago, who was in what she called the sick part. And she came in every week or every 2 weeks over a 6-month period when she was in this part. And she said, I think the chemistry of this part is making me sick.
Is making you ill. And it turns out that you actually use an acting technique, method acting, to help people gain happiness. How does that work?
All kinds of things are used, the sounds, the aromas, the colors, the costuming, the music. We all know that there's music for different feelings, music of sadness, music of happiness, and they use this all the time. There's lighting. The stage people use lights to change the mood of the audience, and that's all a chemistry. So what do I do with the lighting in my home? What do I do with the colors that I wear? What do I do with my posture? What do I do with my breath? And this is the method. How do I walk like a happy person?
And all these things can have a dramatic impact. Are these benefits measurable, and what are some of the specific benefits that are achieved as a result of kind of this internal chemistry you talk about?
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of benefits that are measurable. You can see pain reduction in the side of healthcare. You can see relaxation if you're in a happy, upbeat part.
You had an interesting piece of your presentation that reflected on the attitude and the approach of your Aunt Vera.
Right.
Let's take a look.
Vera was one of these farm ladies that back when I was growing up, the way to be measured as to how good you were doing on the farm was how the egg production was coming on your particular farm. Vera was always the best egg producing farm wife of all my relatives, and I knew how she did it. As we got down to the chicken coop outside the door, Vera not only would have the big red comb in her hair, but she'd also put on a big red scarf around her neck. And I couldn't figure out why I had the little red kerchief around my neck, but she had put that there on purpose. She put the red baseball cap on my head. She turned the bill up a little bit, and she says, "You know, if you want to get the girls excited, you have to look like a rooster." And so outside the door, we would do the little chicken dance, and she could hear the crowd inside was really getting excited. She knew the chickens. She knew what they wanted. We opened the door, and here we would go in, and here were the chickens. Here were the girls loving the performance.
That was a very humorous example of how your Aunt Vera got her chickens to be more productive. But does that kind of acting and that method apply to human productivity as well?
Oh, sure. It applies to teaching is one of those great things. If you're in the teaching literature that's out there, if you have a teacher that's upbeat and fun to be around, the students perform better. Happiness is contagious. It's spreadable. If you're
in
around,
a good way.
If you're around a lot of happy people, a happy-demic starts.
Very good. You mentioned prescriptions, and for the welderly, as you refer to them now, people often find themselves taking many forms of medication.
Right.
But you also speak to an internal pharmacy.
Right.
What drugs are in our internal pharmacy
Oh.
that perhaps the welderly can call upon to assist them?
Right, right. I'd say the euphoric drugs, the pain-reducing drugs, the morphine-like drugs. Endorphins are used as a term often that we'll call those inner uppers that get us high on life. Well, the endorphins have the chemical structure of morphine.
And how can the welderly access that internal pharmacy? What do they need to do to release those endorphins?
Well, I would say that you can't just wish it on.
Okay.
You can't just sit here and say, I wish to be happy. That's not going to work.
Doesn't work.
But you might visualize yourself being happy. That one might help some.
Okay.
But it just won't happen. So wishing, thinking, but probably more than any other way of doing it is to do the physical activities that happy people do.
Such as?
Such as running, hopping, skipping, jumping, walking. I mean, I will ask people sometime, when was the last time you skipped?
Probably has been a while.
Oh, it could have been a long time, probably not after high school for most people. When did you do some of the fun things that you used to do a lot? Do them again, bring them back.
Doctor, you have talked about people coming in and saying, I've lost my grip, I've lost my strength, I've lost my balance. Let's take a look at this clip as a part of your presentation.
But how do you bring balance back? I mean, those of us of our age, falling is one of the big problems. Don't only maintain your strength and your muscles, but regain them again. We know that people who go and work out can add muscle weight. And what is the one thing, more than anything else, in the new book that's out, I wish I was part of an author of this, but it's the 100 simple things that you can do to prevent Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment. The 100 things. Number 1 on the list, move. Not out of your house, but around the block. Do whatever you can to keep moving. I mean, the little exercise that you did here today, that was good movement. I think that there is a lot of quiet nerves and quiet muscle fibers that have just lost their capacity to respond. But once you ask them to respond, they will come back. It's kind of that old saying of, once you've ridden a bicycle and haven't done it for 50 years, you still know how to ride a bicycle. Okay. If you knew how to speak a language at one time and then you haven't used it for 50 years, and all of a sudden you say, I'm going to maybe go to some place where they speak Spanish and I will see if it comes back. It comes back fast if you've once got it there. The little branches, the little trunks of the tree, and that's what the brain is. The brain has all kinds of little connections. All those little connections, a lot of the little twigs drop off. But we can put the twigs back because the branches are still there. The trunks of the tree are still there. So the big trick of neurobics and of getting things back is to go and re-leaf.
And not too late, even in advancing years, to do so.
It's not too late to do it.
Thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Clearly, seniors are taking charge of their golden years and making them count. As communities work to address the needs of the growing elderly population, you can be sure the welderly will speak up, hopefully with a smile. For Donnie Rolls, I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Good night from the heart of the matter.